Okay, welcome. In this video, we are going to talk about IP masquerading. Alright, so in the previous video, we have discussed the IP aliasing. IP aliasing was nothing, but it was just simply like assigning multiple IP addresses to a single network. IP masquerading, it's quite opposite to that. So you can say in IP masquerading, uh, one system basically acts as a gateway. So in IP aliasing, we had multiple IP addresses assigned to a single network. In IP masquerading, what happens is that you have one machine and it acts as an IP gateway for a network. So for example, you have private machines on a network. So what's going to happen is that you have those machines and uh, all those private machines are basically communicating with the internet using one single machine, which is a gateway. Okay, so in our case, for example, I had the diagram above here, I guess. Yes, here it is. So if you see here in the diagram, we have PC1, that is basically a private system. We have PC2 and we have PC3. So the idea is that all three private networks, private systems, they have different IP addresses. So the gateway system, however, it is just going to do what? Whatever system is going to send a request to the internet or something, it is going to go through the gateway system. So the gateway system is going to replace the IP address of the private system and it is going to send the request towards the internet. So in this case, let's say PC1 is sending the request to the internet. So what is going to happen that all other devices on the internet, they're going to assume that the source of the request is the gateway system, right? But that is not reality. In real, the source is PC1. Okay, so PC1 has a different private IP address, but it sends that when it sends the request through the gateway replaces the IP address of the PC1. It assigns it its address and then it sends the request to the internet. So in that way, the internet is going to assume that the gateway system is the source of the request. Okay, isn't it magical? Yes, it is. So what's going to happen next is that the internet is going to send back the packets, okay, or you can say the response to the request, and that gateway system is going to receive it, right? So now what is going to happen that the gateway system is receiving those requests and it is basically giving it to the source. So that's how this system works. All right, I hope you got the point. In the similar way, if you take the example of PC2, if you take the example of PC3, they have different IP addresses, different private IP addresses, right? So what's going to happen when they're going to send the request to the internet, the gateway system again is going to replace their IP address and it is going to send it to the internet, the request, and internet would assume again that the request is coming from the gateway system, while in real the request is coming from the private systems. All right, so I hope you have got the point. And in the similar way, when the internet would send back the response, it is going to assume that the gateway system is the source, and when the source will receive the request, the response, it is going to send it back to the PC2 and PC3 respectively. Okay, so that's how this thing works, and this whole phenomena is IP masquerading. So I hope I have explained to you everything. So now let's go through the slides. Let's do the formality. So now what happens is that all PCs on network, they send their IP packets, as I have told you, through the gateway, and it basically replaces the source IP address. So what I'm doing here, I'm repeating once again. So while we were discussing the diagram, I have explained you the whole process. So now I'm going to go through it again so you understand it in a better way. All right, so all PCs on a network, they send their IP packets through the gateway, as I have explained. So what happens is that the gateway replaces the source IP address with its own address and afterwards forward it to the internet. So the source, the private PC, it is hidden It is hidden behind the gateway. So the world is thinking that the gateway is somehow the source, but it is not reality. All right. So when the source is hidden, there are some constraints, you could say, occur. Okay. So the private system, they cannot actually take external calls because they are not communicating with the internet directly. They are communicating with the internet indirectly through the gateway. So it is almost impossible for them to receive the external calls. All right. So however, it's not like that all services are stopped working. They have not stopped working. In fact, some of the services like file transfer protocol FTP, they are working in the passive mode. Okay. So in active mode you cannot actually receive calls, but in passive mode some of the services would work. Okay. So this is the diagram that I have explained already. So now moving on, when you want to do your IP masquerading on a system, your kernel must be configured with following options. Number one, you got to have the network firewalls, all right, enabled. So number two, you got to have TCP or IP networking enabled. And number three, you got to have IP forwarding and gatewaying enabled. It is obvious, if it is not enabled, how are you going to make a system a gateway? All right, it is impossible. So the number four option that you have to be like, it has to be enabled, is the IP masquerading. Okay. So the most widely recognized configuration for IP masquerading is to have a machine with SLIP or PPP. So these are just simple protocols that you can actually study. All right. So these are very simple protocols, the basic protocols. And the IP ranges that can be used as private IPs, like the ones that we have discussed, like let's say in the diagram, let's say if we go back here, in here, these system PC1, PC2, PC3, they are having IP addresses which are private. All right. So the gateway system, it is having a public IP address, but these IPs here for this PC1, PC2, PC3, they're going to be private. Okay. So let's see the range of the private IP addresses. So the IP and mask range 10.0.0, the mask is 255.0.0.0. All right. From that, the last range is 192.16.0.0, and obviously so on and so forth. It could go .0.1, .2, .3, .4, so on and so forth. And then you have the subnet mask, which is 255.255.0.0. Okay. So these are the basically IP ranges that can be used as private IPs on your private systems, PC1, PC2, PC3, as we have discussed in the diagram. Okay. So let's take an example. Let's consider that we have a network and it has an IP address of 192.168.1.0. So what we are going to do, that we're going to route it towards the 8080 device, what we are going to do, ultimately we are going to try to masquerade it. Okay. So the IP addresses, the nodes that would become, we are going to masquerade them. That is our target. So first of all, we are driving internet, the traffic, towards the 8080 device. We are assigning it. So the next step is basically that you are going to default route for the rest of the internet. You're going to have a default route for the rest of the internet, and you're going to perform the second command, route add default PPP0. Okay, PPP0. Then all the nodes over that thing, 192.168.1.0, are going to be masqueraded if you use this command. The command below, IP chains -a forward -s or -s. Then you write the IP address with the port number. I have written the port number as well. Then you write -j, and then you write MASQ, all in capital, when you will execute that command. So when you will execute these three commands, what it would do, because of the last command, it is going to masquerade all the IPs above that, like 192.168.1.0. So dot 0 is basically the number one IP. So above that, like 168.1.1, 168.1.2, 168.1.3, so on and so forth. So all the nodes that you would create, that you would have on your system, all of them are going to be masqueraded. Okay, so I hope you have got the point. So that's it from this video. I hope you have enjoyed it, you have learned something new. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments below. We will try to be as responsive as possible. And for written articles, keep visiting our website linuxin.com. If you want more articles and more videos like this, then subscribe to our channel and stay tuned. I'll see you.